All right. So, like I was saying, for the people that are going to be watching the recording, I forgot to start it. So I'm just talking about in-text citations. And one of the things that I'm saying is that every sentence that you take information from another source should be cited. Not the end of the paragraph, but every sentence in that paragraph. That if you're using a third party resource, you should be citing that resource with a in-text citation, and then you put that reference that it came from at the end of the paper in the reference section. Um, and like I said, like I was telling the students that are live, is that that's not something that's considered plagiarism or considered or looked upon as negative. This is a research course. And so by you placing that information or references and in-text citations, that is showing that you've done research because you're referencing a third party resource that you're using to write your paper. And that's what the expectation is, that you get good at that process. That's why I keep pointing out every week in-text citations, references. Put your tables in APA format. Put your figures in APA format. So by the time you leave this course, you shouldn't have any issue with APA format throughout the rest of your program. You should have most of the basics. There may be some things that certain professors, have little quirks about, but for the most part, you should be good. And so that's why I keep harping on APA format, because you're in a research-based course, and the formatting for research-based courses, research journals, a lot of the research journals use APA format, and all of that is something that you need to know how to do. And the better you get at it, the easier it becomes because you get used to it. And there's all kinds of resources that can help you with your formatting, but the basics right now is just references, in-text citations. That PowerPoint I gave you shows you how to do tables or how to do a figure in APA format. So all of that is in there. Um, and one of the papers I looked at this week, I started looking at it, and it has a whole lot of and, and and what I'm saying is, like, with your PowerPoint presentations, they should be straightforward and simple. Uh, all of the diagrams and backgrounds and all of that kind of stuff. If you look at the presentation I gave you, that presentation is very clear. There's no background stuff going on. There's a little color in it, but for the most part, it's simple and plain. you know and so that's what you want, because the ultimate goal is communication. So you don't want the format to take away from the message that you're trying to communicate or the research that you're trying to communicate. So that's why when you look at the requirements for APA format, there is no background, there is no underlining and all of that kind of stuff. um you know But if you want to be a grad student, you're going to have to put the time and effort to learn APA. You got to put the time and effort to do the research. Um, you got to do the time and effort to make sure your writing is correct. One of the things that I used to do, I would basically have a checklist. Every week, my instructor gave me feedback. I put that feedback in my checklist. If there was some feedback around grammar, I made sure that that was not in the next paper that he got or she got. You know, I put things in place to help me to become better, because that was my whole purpose in school. I wasn't just trying to get a piece of paper. I wanted to be able to be the professional in the graduate level writing that I was being trained for, you know, and I put things in place to help me to become better. Another thing that you all can do is tutor.com. If you plan your assignment out and do it ahead, you have time to submit it to tutor.com, and they're going to give you feedback. You document the feedback that they gave you, So in your next paper, you can start looking for those errors, you know. But it's all about putting things in place to help you, and then to remind you to check certain things that you are doing on a regular basis. Once you do that, then you start checking it over and over and over, you stop doing it because you've kind of ingrained it in yourself. So, so when I'm giving you feedback, that's the whole point of that, is to make you hopefully better, and hopefully you put things in place to check the things that you're getting told over and over again that this type of grammar error you're making, um, you know, this kind of formatting error you're making. I had someone that asked about on the reference page doing a hanging indentation, and you know, all of that kind of stuff is publicly available. All I did is went out, said, how do I create a hanging indentation on my reference page in APA format? I got umpteen videos. Pick the video, send it to her. I can't remember if it was a guy or a girl, but I sent them the video. Okay. So all of that information is out there. You just have to take the time and go and search for it. And it took me 2 minutes, long enough to type it in there. You know, what else did I had somebody, oh, well, they didn't ask me this, but one of the students wrote a paper and noticed that your APA paper is supposed to be double spaced. Well, if you are not careful and you look at that paper and you don't see that it's double spaced, then what's probably is happening is that there's added spaces after the paragraph or added spaces before the paragraph. Okay. And so what you have to do, excuse me, guys, I got a cold. What you got to do is you got to go in there and remove those added spaces before and after the paragraph in Word. Let me see if I can find a Word document, just a document in Word, or just let me open up Word and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, and so what is it? Like this example. This is look like something for let me see. Hold on a second. I'm trying to type in my password. Oh, okay, hold on one second. It's asking me to log in. No, don't want to go there. Don't want to go there. Nope. It's trying to not log me into another school. Let me correct this. One second, guys. It keeps trying to log me into another school instead of logging me into my Indiana Tech account. Oh, come Hold on. Let me see if this works. All right, I'm gonna have to come back to that. For some reason, my computer is not letting me log in. All right. So, but like I said, if you go and search like something like adding, let's see,
Create PDF spaces in a click.
like
Connect your docs. And then
Hello, and in this video, we are going to learn how to add or delete space between paragraphs in Word,
this is gonna show
including
you
how
what I'm
to deal
talking
with
about.
stubborn files. So, you have finished working
Thought
on
it
your
had
document
volume.
and
This
you
one
want
doesn't
to add
have
a little bit
volume.
of
Doesn't look like,
space
or it's
between each
delete.
paragraph for easier reading. Of course, you can manually go to
But
the
just
end
do
of
something
each
like
paragraph
adding
and press
spaces
enter,
after a
and Word will
paragraph in
insert a
Word.
new empty
And what it's
line,
gonna do is
but you
show
could
you.
have to
Notice that
manually
this
do it for every paragraph.
it's gonna have
So,
like
a better
spaces. Notice that it just
alternative is
added a
to
space
select
there.
the
There's no
entire
space.
document,
It added
then
one.
go to
But you're gonna
paragraph
double space,
and
so it
click on
won't
this
look like this.
button,
This is single
line and
space. But you
paragraph
see what they're
spacing,
clicking
and
on,
select add
that little
space
icon.
before paragraph.
That's what I'm
And
talking about.
anytime you want to delete space between
So if
paragraphs,
you click on
just
this little
select the whole
icon
document.
here,
Go to line and
you're going to
paragraph
see that you can
spacing
add and
and
remove
select
spaces.
remove
You can double
space before
space by using
paragraph.
the two.
And it's done.
And then you want to
Now,
make
what if
sure
it
that there's
doesn't
no
work?
additional
I
spaces
have
that
a
are
very
added.
similar looking document here,
But,
but if
you
I go
know,
to
this
line
is
and
how to do that.
paragraph and click on add
And you can just
space
search on
before
how to add or
paragraph,
remove
it will
spaces
only
after
add a
paragraphs
little
in
bit of
Word.
space before the first paragraph, which is not
Okay.
what I want.
And so when I'm
And this
saying
is
move the
probably due
spaces,
to an
this may be what
existing
I'm talking
setting.
about.
So in this case, what we need
Because
to
some
do is to click
papers
on
come
this
set
little
up
icon
and they
to open the
already
paragraph
have
setting.
extra
And in the
space
spacing
after or
options,
before.
you will see
And
the
you just have
option
to
that
go in
is
there,
causing the
especially
trouble.
when you
Don't
do
add
a header
space between
and you see a whole lot
paragraphs
of
of the
space
same
around the
style.
header.
And it is
Then you
in
want to check
blue,
this to
which
make
means
sure.
that it is checked by default.
Okay.
So all we need to do is to
All right.
uncheck it, and it's
So
done.
let me end this.
this video will show you how to
All right. So that's it on formatting. Um, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on. All right. So the module 3 overview. All right. So this is module 3. And notice here for module 3, the learning objectives are going to be describe inferential statistical measurements, explain the importance of understanding data set quality, shape, and correct data classification. You're going to construct appropriate statistical measures for a business problem. And so then they get into why this is important. So notice when you're analyzing a problem or request, you need to understand your data set to make several choices before you complete the final product. In other words, the truthful and accurate results of statistical analysis depend on your understanding of your data quality, shape, and accurate interpretation of the data. This lesson shows you the elements that affect the results. Okay. And then it gets into additionally taking a closer look at inferential statistics help you to understand why inferential analysis of data is so powerful in the business world. Being able to forecast into the future aligns with business planning and projections. These statistical tests make this possible. So notice it tells you that at this stage, it is helpful to have a business problem to answer using appropriate data sets and statistical measurements. The business problem is explained, and you will need to understand the data set provided to answer the problem. This is where you will select the appropriate statistical measurements for the results. So, as a reminder, if you are using AI for guidance or resources, please read this article from the APA Style blog by Timothy McAdoo, How to Cite Chat GPT. And then, so if you just click on this, it's going to go through and tell you how to use, how you cite Chat GPT. You know, all right. So this is how you would use basically generative AI. So notice that they have Chat GPT, they have Open AI, and other generative AI tools. Okay. Now, notice this is a parathetical citation. This is how you would do it. And this is a narrative citation. So, this is the citation where you paraphrased. This citation, you may open up a sentence quoting with this. So, make sure you go look at the difference between the two citations. All right. Statistical measurements. So, the module one lesson presented an overview of inferential statistics. In the module two lesson, provided a further breakdown of the supervised and the unsupervised machine learning. So, in this lesson, we will explore more closely the various types of inferential measurements. So, they get into a conversation around inferential statistics, what it is, give you some examples. So notice here, when we talk about statistical measurement, we're using the analysis of variance data variable. So notice what it does. It's going to evaluate the mean of three or more variables or groups to compare the variables and determine if they are statistically significant. So notice that it talks about three or more variables or groups that you're going to compare. Now, if you want to compare two variables or two populations, then there's a two sample test, you know, or if you want to compare a sample against a established, you know, data point or something that's historically proven, a historical mean, and you want to see how that data performs against that historical mean, then there's a test for that. But analysis of variance if you want to compare three groups. Then you have regression. You want to explore the relationship between the variables. Are they correlated, or how do they move together? Are they positively correlated or negatively correlated? Chi-squared explores the relationship between the two categorical variables. So in order for them to be chi-squared, they have to be categorical variables. And then your confidence interval slash trust in results, and it's a percentage that shows how high your confidence is in the answer. And so they go through an example of ANOVA. Okay. Notice you have these three groups. Then you get your summary table from ANOVA, single factor. And then you have the results of the ANOVA. And it talks about, what that means. Here's a how to perform a one-way ANOVA video. Let's
In
make
this
sure that
video
works.
tutorial, I'm going to show you how to perform a one-way
Oh,
analysis of
my speaker is
variance,
low.
or one-way ANOVA, by using Microsoft Excel. This includes performing the test and analyzing the results.
So make sure you watch that video. Read this. Here's a little article statistical significance in business application of ANOVA. So if you hadn't reviewed ANOVA in a long time, well, make sure you're going back through these articles or watching other resources to get a better understanding of it. And what I mean by better understanding is when to use it and why you're using it. Then regression. Here's an article on regression, and it explains regression. So if you want to use regression or you think your problem fits a regression, go through and read this article. And then chi-squared. So notice chi-squared so far. We have discussed inferential statistics for numerical data. Most of the methods don't take into consideration nominal or ordinal data, but the chi-squared provides you with a way to evaluate categorical data. So here's a video on that, on how to use the chi-squared for categorical data. And then confidence intervals. Okay. And it talks about confidence interval and explain that to you. So this is the LinkedIn article. Now, the other thing you want to do, guys, is if this is something that you may be doing in the future, you want to save these articles because it can be a good resource. You don't want to come back and be like, I wish I had that article. Just save it to a PDF. Just print it and print it as a PDF. And then they get into data quality, shape, and classification. So the first thing they talk about is data quality. And they tell you that any statistical analysis depends on the quality of the data. So bad data equals bad results. So part of the job before starting statistical analysis is to review the data. Look for outliers, which are extreme values, missing information, duplicates, and inconsistent values. Okay. Looking at the dates with different formats. Compare to month, day, year as used in the US. Review the tabs below to learn more about the various dimensions of data quality. So these are the dimensions of data quality. You just click on them and they talk about it. So look at those. And then, it goes into a little bit more detail on data quality. Here's a video on what is data quality management and why it's important. Make sure you check that video out. And then here's a example of a graphic data flow through the organization. Okay. And it gives you some more details and percentages here. And then they give you another article on what is data quality. Click on it, just make sure. And notice that this goes in a little bit more around data quality. And notice that it gives you the difference between data quality, data integrity, and data profiling. And then you go into the shape of data. And then you have the normal curve, positive skewed, negative skewed, and bimodal. So when you plot your data, it may look like one of these categories. Then it gets into about standard deviation. Then it goes into data classification. And so notice the data classification, we have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. And so there are different tests that can be used on different types or different classifications of data. Okay. So ratio is the highest level. So there's going to be certain tests, statistical tests, that only can be used on ratio data. Notice that we said that the chi-squared is for categorical data. Okay. And then this is a learning activity that you can go through. And then appropriate statistical measurements for a data set. So notice this is kind of what I kind of touch on. And this video is a YouTube video, so it looks like it's working.
I'm Molly. I'm the head of people analytics at X, the Moonshot Factory. I absolutely love my job. I have such a deep appreciation for data and what it can do.
So check out what Molly is saying. And then the business problem. So notice it tells you that this part of the lesson focus on aligning the appropriate statistical measurement with the business problem. So using the provided data sets and the defined problem, your task is to determine the most suitable analytical approach. Notice that the business problem for this lesson is as follows. Budgets are tight, and the Premier League administration needs to determine which players from the 2020 season should return to the play another year. Now, when you look at this problem is from a student perspective, um, has given students a lot of problem. So the way I grade this problem is, did you attempt it and did you turn in something that made sense? So, you know, this problem is very difficult because it requires you to have a lot of understanding of football. And I'm thinking I think this is soccer more so than soccer. This is soccer more so than American football. Okay. So the performance measurements are based on three areas: technical skills, physical attributes, tactical awareness, you know. And so they go into and explain all of that for you. Okay. And so here's an article that's you need to read that's going to help you with this analysis. And notice it's a comprehensive analysis of the Greek soccer league. So based on this article, and what you gather from this article, it's going to help you analyze this data set. So I'm just giving you, you know, heads up. Don't wait till the last day, Sunday, to try to do this, or you're going to be totally overwhelmed. The other thing is, do not include the data set. I don't need, when students submit that the data for these assignments, I don't need the data, because if I want the data, I can go back and get the data. So don't include the data, because it just goes, when you submit it, it just pages and pages and pages of data, and it takes me forever to open the your document. So do not submit the data with your file. If I need the data, I can go get it. You know, or you can include the data in your Excel file. But don't even include it in well, you got to include it in Excel, but don't include it such that it's going to come up on my page and just give me pages and pages of data. And that's typically what's happening. It takes me like 5 minutes to open a document or longer. Sometimes they won't even open. Okay, but here's an analysis on the soccer that will help you. Any questions on anything so far? All right. So that's the end of this. Here's some optional resources about soccer and soccer players and all of that. Some more references. All right. So your assignments for this week, we're going to go through those. So notice you have a discussion, as usual. your original post is going to be due Thursday night at 11:59, and then your replies to 2 classmates are due by Sunday night at 11:59. So notice this week we have been learning about inferential statistical measurements. In your own words, describe each of the following inferential statistical measurements. Now, when they say in your own words, of course, you don't know what regression is off the top of your head. So what they're saying is use a resource for the definition of regression analysis, put it in your own words, use a in-text citation and a reference at the bottom. Same thing with ANOVA. You're going to go find some resource that explains ANOVA. You're going to take that resource, put it into your own words. In other words, that's called paraphrasing. You're going to paraphrase the definition that they give you for ANOVA or information that they give you for ANOVA that you find value. You're going to write it in your own words, and you're going to put an in-text citation on every sentence that you took from some other source. And it should be every sentence because you're not going to know ANOVA off the top of your head. And the same thing for the other two. Okay. So you should have in-text citations for all 4 of those definitions. All right. And they should be in your own words. Provide a real world example of 2 of the inferential statistical measurements in the list above. All right. Clearly describe how you selected measurements. Hold on, I'm sorry. Clearly describe how your selected measurements would be used in the provided examples, and then reply to 2 students' post by offering additional insights or asking further questions about the contribution. Okay, and Kelsey posted first. So we see she does have in-text citation. Okay. Oh, okay. So you got to give. So notice what she did. I'm just trying to rationalize what she did. So she made a table where she talks about what regression is. Okay. Then she defined what ANOVA is. And notice that she's giving citations. But she gave an example of ANOVA. And then she gave an example, a definition, and example for chi-squared. And then just a definition for confidence interval. So good job, Kelsey. That's a good example for me to use. And so notice she has references for everything she cited within the body of this post. And so far, Kelsey is the only person that has posted. All right. All right. Assignment 1 is a data set quality, shape, and classification exercise. So for this assignment, you will prepare a slide presentation focused on data quality, shape, and classification. Okay. Please see the specific instructions below. Your presentation must be at least 6 slides, not including the titles and the reference slide. Okay. And it must comply with APA writing guidelines. To find guidance on APA formatting, you can go to the course homepage up under student resources. You can also look at the PowerPoint presentation that everyone should have from their week 1 assignment. And then it goes into the instructions. It says this week's lesson and resources highlight the importance of understanding data set quality, shape, and correct data classification. For the assignment, prepare a slide presentation that explains why data set quality, shape, and the following types of data classifications are important for statistical analysis. So the nominal, the ordinal, interval, and ratio. So provide valid reasons and examples within the presentation on why these analytical perspectives are necessary for quality results. The presentation must have at least 6 slides, not including the title and reference slide, and it must comply with APA writing guidelines. And submit your completed presentation below. If you have any questions, let me know. And now notice that I don't want 50 slides. So you want to keep it concise. Make sure you review the rubric. This is how I'm going to be grading that assignment, by this rubric. Okay. And so notice there's 2 sections. So that's how I'm going to grade this. Any questions on the assignment? Okay, I guess that means that it's clear. And then you have, this is the soccer assignment. So for the assignment, you would prepare a deliverable of your choice. In other words, a written document, slide presentation, or a brochure. Focus on appropriate statistical measures for a business problem. Please see the specific instructions below. Your completed deliverables should comply with APA writing requirements. To find guidance on APA, go to the course home and also look at the PowerPoint that I provided you. Even though you may not be writing a PowerPoint, it still can help you on formatting. So notice that the business problem says that the budgets are tight and the administration of the Premier League needs to know which player from the 2020 season should return to play another season. The administration wants to use the statistics in the data set linked below to better understand all of the players in the league. So review the business problem above using the data set from the football 2020, which is here. You can download it here. Spreadsheet. Analyze the data to determine which players from each team should be retained for the 2021 season. Then prepare a deliverable of your choice, a written document, slide presentation, brochure, and you can use this as a resource. Okay. And your deliverable clearly present data that supports the decision of which player to keep. Ensure the management problem is clearly defined. You want to draw connections between the business problem and the statistical measures used to address it. Consider what makes a player valuable to the team. Which statistics best demonstrates a player's contribution and justify their retention. Review the Module 3 lesson and resources for insights on how to address this part of the assignment. So that's in the PowerPoint, this section. Okay. Include relevant graphics, images, diagrams, or other visualizations that help demonstrate the concept and support your explanation. All graphics must be properly cited. In other words, all images, tables, figures need to be in APA format. And then you want to submit your completed deliverable below. If you have questions, let me know. Notice that this has a rubric. This is the rubric. So these are the things that you're going to be graded on. Now, if you don't have any graphics in your presentation, you automatically are going to lose 20 points. So I just want to call it out. So notice there's a section called relevant graphics. If your presentation, paper, whatever you do doesn't have appropriate graphics, then you're going to lose 20 points because they did not exist. You did not include. So make sure you take that into consideration. And then your Techlive submission. Just want to point out that you need to make sure that you're doing a reflection of the Techlive, not a reflection from something you've read. Okay. All right. So that's going to be it for this module 3, week 3. Does anyone have any questions or need any additional clarification on anything? All right. Bryce says he's all good. Kelsey, Ivalyn, any questions or y'all good? Okay. Kelsey raised her hand. Go for it, Kelsey. I guess that meant you were good. She's struggling, Bryce. So obviously y'all know each other or have talked to each other. Oh, or maybe married. I see y'all have the same last name. Okay, yeah, married. Okay. All righty. That's good, man. Y'all taking stats, going to y'all through y'all master program together. That's nice. All right, if there's no questions, guys, I'll give you back, what is it, about 9, 10 minutes, 19 minutes. So if you have any questions, just let me know. And everybody have a good night. Thanks. Thanks. Ending the recording.